Our society breeds immature men. And when you get past all of the conditioning, all of the stuff on the outside and reveal that the little boy on the inside just wants to be loved, just wants connection, just wants to share his gifts. I've never met a man in all my years I've been doing this. I don't want to say done the work, but for lack of better words, done the work and is not more curious to go even deeper, to keep doing the work, to keep showing up, to keep being better and more loving for himself, for his inner child, and for everyone in his life. It's just what lights the man up.
Welcome to the Well-Worshipped Man podcast, where men come to build unshakable presence, become the rock in their relationship, and shape a legacy that lasts beyond their years. Here, we explore the path to mature masculinity through humble power, daily devotion, and unwavering integrity.
Thanks, baby. And before we dive in today, make sure you follow the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on and leave a review. It helps us a ton to let this message reach the people that it needs to reach most. And today on the podcast, we have a special guest, Jacob Metzger. Jacob is a masculinity and money coach. He's helped over 1,000 clients create more health, wealth, love, and freedom in their lives. Welcome to the podcast, Jacob.
It is an honor to be on the Worshipped Man.
We're excited
Such a
to
great
have
title.
you.
The first piece of content that I saw from Jacob Loves Being Alive, that's you on Instagram, was the first piece of content I'd seen of another man using the word worship to describe a facet of his romantic union. And I was like, we have to have Jacob on the podcast.
Well-Worshipped Man.
That's right. It's a perfect marriage. So talk to us about what worship means to you in the context of your union.
To preface, I imagine most of your listeners are attuned to the word worship and aren't easily offended by it. But I will preface with saying, if it does offend you for whatever reasons, just replace it with praise or something similar. Maybe you guys can offer a similar word. And I prefaced with that because in my experience, people completely convolute the message because they're offended by the word worship and make it almost dogmatic. Yeah. Like worship is only reserved for a specific sector of life or belief systems or spiritual deities. That said, worship to me, when I think about why we all do what we do, I always come back to our relationships. At least for me, almost everything I do, from wanting to build an empire to wanting to be present with my children to everything big and small, is to improve the relationships in my life, to bring more love, more clarity, more joy, more wholeness, more fulfillment, more connection to those relationships. The most important relationship of our lives, in my opinion, is our relationship to our spouse, to our partner. And it's like a trickle-down effect. If things aren't good with me and my woman, or woman and man, whatever, it can't be great with the kids. And thus, like, you can't be thriving in your business if your most important relationship of your life is suffering. So when I think of worshiping my woman and think of her as the most important relationship of my life, why wouldn't I worship her? Why wouldn't I want to worship the most important relationship of my life? And even let's talk about God for a second. Even if my most important relationship is God, but I'm not right with my woman or with my man, the main person in my life, my relationship with God suffers. So for me, it's just logical that I'm going to do everything in my power to meet my woman's needs on the highest levels possible because I want to, because her joy is my joy. Her suffering is my suffering. Her empowerment is my empowerment, and vice versa.
When you're offering that people can use a different word, what I notice in my body when there's other words used in place of something like worship, it's like, yes, we can praise the person that we're in partnership with, but when you say worship, I'm like, oh, this is serious. And then you
Totally.
explain and then you explain what it means and the impact that it has on all other facets of life. And it's like, it is serious. Like, we should be taking it that seriously because of it being a cornerstone to the way everything else functions. And I'm curious what it looks like. You're explaining the why, but what does that look like in practice for people who are listening?
Making your spouse a priority. Getting back to the basics. What did you do in the beginning of the relationship that you don't do anymore? You likely pursued each other a lot more. You likely flirted a lot more. You likely had a lot more sex. You likely were playful with each other. You didn't take things so seriously in the relationship. And you appreciated each other more. Like, I always tell my relationship clients, write down the top 5 things you did in the beginning of the relationship for your partner and compare that to how you treat them now. And if you want to get back to the, whatever you want to call it, that honeymoon phase, that's what I was looking for, the honeymoon phase in relationship, that can last a lifetime. If you pursue them, take them on dates. Speaking to women, men, plan the dates for your woman. You don't have to plan every single one, but it's really easy to make reservations at a restaurant, ask your woman to get into her favorite dress, and say, baby, we have reservations at 7:00. Wear something that makes you look beautiful.
Yeah, when I think of worship, it is singular. There are other people I respect besides Jessica. There are other people that I trust and admire, and even other people that I praise sometimes. But she's the only human walking this earth that I worship. So I think that's the differentiation, is that the level of presence that I bring to her in the arena of worship is greater than what I bring to any other relationship in my life. And, you flipped a belief there that the honeymoon phase just happens during the honeymoon phase. And, if somebody comes forward and says, no, like, I think it can last for life. And they're like, oh, like, that's so cute that you think it could last for life. I've been with my wife for 20 years and we got projects that we manage and, there's too much, we have bonded in a way that has made the honeymoon energy inaccessible. And, one way that I see that happening is that they become, co-managers of the household, which is an important role that needs to have. You need to talk about the things that are happening in the house and make sure that there's order. How do you split the responsibilities of managing the household and devoting your attention, your masculine presence to maintaining that honeymoon phase? Do you feel like you do split it, or you're like, yeah, how do you divvy that up?
We follow a very detailed structure. And I organize that structure. Okay, so here, let me lay it out for you guys. I wake up at 4:30. I do my thing in my business, for my body, for my mind, for my spirit, from 4:30 till around 7. And then I take baby and the kids, get the kids ready for school from 7 to 9. 7 to 9 is my wife's time to do whatever she wishes, to be creative, to nurture herself, to pleasure herself, whatever it is that she wants that day. That's her, like, mama time. And then I go to work. And then usually around 3 or 4, I'll give my wife another hour to be by herself. For all the moms listening to this, mamas need lots of recharge time. So we do our best every day to give her at least 2 to 3 hours, if not more, of time to be in her own presence and her own space. Every Sunday, we go on a date. The date's from 3 to 4 hours. It's at the same time the babysitter knows every Sunday to come over at 2:00. And we have from 2:00 to 5 or 6 to do whatever we want. So we have date nights consistently every single week. And if for whatever reason it doesn't work out that week, we make up for it the next week and go on 2 dates. because our relationship is the priority. And usually there's worshiping happening on those date nights.
As you're talking about, the structure of prioritizing, first of all, each other's alone time, but then also these date nights. And you mentioned that you have your clients write down, what they did in the beginning and what they're not doing now. I was reminded of this passage. I don't have it memorized. I wish that I did, but there's a passage in this book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People where the author is talking to someone and the man is just like, my wife and I don't love, like, we don't love you. I don't love her anymore. What do I do? And it sounds like he's basically trying to get the author to say, break up with her, And the author's response repeatedly over and over is, love her, just love her. And the guy's like, but you don't get it. You're not hearing what I'm saying. I don't anymore. And eventually the author gets to this place of saying, no, love is an action. It's a decision. You're not loving her actionably the way that you did in the beginning. So of course, you're not experiencing the emotion of love because you're not putting in the effort, the intent, the behaviors that manifest those emotions. And that seems to be something, it's such an easy fix if people understand that that's the equation to get the outcome that you want, as long as both people are willing to be on the same page about it. But it does seem to get lost over time when we go into these like management roles of this is the business of our life together. And that alone time, I think, is a really important key as well. There is so much that we can't restore in the presence of other people. We don't even really know our needs unless we're in like the silence and the stillness of our own being. And I think it's really beautiful that you have your own time in the morning first, and then there's like a reserved time for her. And I'm sure that that allows you not only to care for each other better, but also for your children better when both of your cups are, highly nourished from time with self and time with spirit.
I want to just share a quote for all the men listening to this and all the fathers or to be fathers. Wake up before them, for them.
Mm.
I literally say that to myself every morning, have been for years now. And still, I wake up. I never want to get out of bed. Never want to do a fucking cold plunge within minutes of waking up. I do it for them, not for me. Wake up before them, get your shit together, take care of yourself, do what needs to be done for you to be in a good state.
Yeah.
For them.
Yeah. One of the biggest problems that I see among men is that responsibility grows, careers demanding, families demanding, and they leave themselves out of the equation. It's a step past self-sacrifice, and it's towards self-omission, right? Where they deplete themselves in the name of being the provider in a way that dulls their edge, saps their vitality. They lose their enthusiasm because they're not doing things like waking up before their family for them. They have no time for themselves. And then they use this as like a covert strategy to avoid taking on things like emotional leadership, being emotionally relevant to their kids and to their spouse. And so for any of the men listening to this, it's not like optional to take time for yourself and to do your spiritual practice, do your physical practice, check in with the things that are happening between your ears. Yeah. One thing that you talked about is creating order in the house, and you have this structure, right? And there are men that aren't able to do that. Their homes are chaotic. Their lives are chaotic. What do you see as the barrier for men that aren't able to create order within their lives, whether that's something that stopped maturing in childhood or if it's a matter of will? What stops guys from creating order for themselves and for the people they love?
Isaac, I love what you said in the beginning about vision. And the way I interpret that biblical verse that you said is without a vision, we perish.
Mm-hmm.
Men get so caught up in their day-to-day activities that they lose sight of what drives them, what they really want beyond the 9 to 5 grind, even beyond money. Like when men tap into that source, that inner voice that says, this is what lights me up, this is what I want to create for my family, for myself, for my ecosystem, that takes a man really far places. We've just been conditioned to let that inner voice be dimmed by the noise of society. So having a vision and goals, like my mentors tell me, people aren't lazy, they just don't have big enough goals. I'm like, oh, it's so good. So having a vision, having some clear goals that make you grow and evolve as a man, because men grow through challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Like if men aren't being challenged physically, especially mentally, spiritually, they're going to be stagnant. And when there's stagnancy, then you're not showing up as a full presence for the people you love, which is virtually the whole purpose of your life. Like what you really want at the end of the day is to be that steadfast man, provider, lover for your family and everything. And when you don't have that, a man suffers.
Yeah. Yeah. What I'm hearing from you is the importance of guys finding a way to swim to the surface of their everyday to-dos, to find a way to get their head out of the dirt, to unplug from the matrix, to retreat from the rat race long enough for that inner voice to come alive. Unfortunately, we do live in the West in a culture that prioritizes this frenetic movement and staying down that bullet point list and like not taking the time to zoom out. And so for guys that feel like they're caught in that, for guys that feel like, I go to work 9 to 5, before work, I'm getting the kids ready. After work, I get to the gym, I get home, I make dinner, and then I go to bed and I wake up and do it again. What can a guy like that do to create some space for himself to see the vision that's cast for his life?
Proximity is power. What I mean by that is, and something I wanted to say on top of the goals and vision was, men, in my opinion, must get around other men who are playing life at a higher level. Like if they want to get beyond the rat race, as you said, get beyond that psychology and way of life, like you got to get around men who, not to sound arrogant, but just like who are on the leading edge, who are showing up in a authentic and integrous way, who are stepping up for their family, for their business, for their ecosystem, for their career, whatever it is. Getting around men who are empowered, who are heart-centered, who are emotionally intelligent, you're going to start mirroring that. The fastest way to level up, go to a retreat. Like Sacred Sons, for example. Sacred Sons runs incredible men's retreats. Get around high-playing men who feel their emotions and are safe spaces and have a vision for their life. And that will be the catalyst that inspires you to rise in your own life. Get around awesome men.
Yeah,
This
there's
is a short
one
answer.
thing that I'll share is like, I asked that question, like, what does this man do? How does he do it? And the teaching is, it's not how, it's who.
I am listening to both of you talk about this, and I'm just feeling like this barrier that exists in humans in general, but for the sake of this conversation, in men, of like not even being to a place where they can admit that what they want is connection, or not even being in a place where they can admit that, that guy is embodying the type of man that he wants to be. There's like this block of, well, I don't need to be in a relationship. I don't need a woman. I'm just going to you know, date whoever or treat women however I want or whatever that is. Or I don't need to be around those guys. Like those guys think that they are so good. And I just don't like that about them. I don't want to be arrogant like they are, when really those men are probably embodying, like you're saying, the integrity, the love that guy's lacking. And so how do we get, people that are stuck in that place to just consider, maybe they have something that you're desiring, or maybe what would it be like to try on the idea that you actually want connection or that you actually want brotherhood? Because it's like once men start doing the work, they see its investment, they'll keep going. But that step from not being around the men who are embodying those things or going to the retreats or investing in themselves to actually doing it seems to be like if we could find it, you know, that would catalyze the most amount of people.
Jessica, I've never worked with a man. I've worked with hundreds of men that did not in his soul want to show up and be the greatest version of himself for the highest good of the people around. When we get past all of the armor and trauma and density that sadly men have carried, not their fault, not their fault. Our society breeds immature men, and when you get past all of the conditioning, all of the stuff on the outside, and reveal that the little boy on the inside just wants to be loved, just wants connection, just wants to share his gifts. I've never met a man in all my years I've been doing this who's, I don't want to say done the work, but for lack of better words, done the work and is not more curious to go even deeper, to keep doing the work, to keep showing up, to keep being better and more loving for himself, for his inner child, and for everyone in his life. It's just what lights the man up. Nothing lights the man up more. Here's the metaphor. When a man can sit back and know, like I imagine like a sunrise sitting on his rocking chair, a man can just sit there, see his family, see his best friends, see his community. Everyone's thriving. He's part of that. When he can just sit back and witness in silence that everyone he loves is thriving and happy and healthy and at peace, that's like the epitome of a man's dream and is provided for.
So funny as you're
That's the fucking
talking.
shit right there.
Yeah. We were sitting on the couch the other day, and I had this, like, out of body experience where I was, like, inside Isaac's head and just, like, really feeling him feel exactly what you're talking about of, like, "Wow, like, I have my woman right here. We're building this beautiful life together. We've completed this day of creation, and, like, everything is good." Like, I am showing up as he has, like, so much integrity, it's crazy. Just, like but him knowing that, I just really felt, like, how good that feels in his body to have, like, everything in order and everything cared for, and him knowing that he's showing up with, like, everything every day.
And you are healthy, happy, provided for. Isaac, is that true?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm stoked on life. Yeah, life's great. But like what we're describing is it's the empire. Like it's the kingdom that is
Yes.
every man's birthright. If he can cast off that armor and the density and the immensity of shame and trauma and
Yes.
guilt that guys carry. And you're talking about this barrier, like this barrier to entry that happens with the work. And maybe you've found differently, Jacob, but unfortunately, what we found is that guys don't approach the work, or at least work with us, until they are near crisis or
Mhm.
in crisis. And so, I haven't figured it out yet, but part of my mission is to shift the culture so that men are more proactive about doing the emotional and inner work that's required for them not to create such damage and pain and struggle in their lives, that they like start the work earlier. And I saw you nodding when I said that. So, I can see that your experience is much the same. But do you have any ideas about how we can inspire men to get started earlier? Well, they go to the gym at age 10, but they're not doing any of this inner work that would actually prevent a lot of strife.
I believe it starts with the new paradigm of fathers. I see so many, and by so many, I mean like my close friends and their kids. And I see the way I'm raising my kids, the way they're raising their kids, the way I see my sacred sons' brothers, my brothers the next generation of kids, I think, is going to be fucking phenomenal and really tapped into this work early on because more men are awakening to it. That said, I know from my own personal experience, I had to have a lot of pain catalysts and dark nights of the soul to get me to where I am today. This wasn't, I didn't find men's work really until like late 20s, and then just dove in because of how much it changed my life and my relationships. I think just leading the way is the most inspiring thing for like men our age and even younger and even older. Like, I was at this retreat with Sacred Sons recently, and I was so delighted and surprised. And I'm saying this with humility. How many people came up to me and like, shit, I know you from Instagram. And that's just me like leading by example in my own life and maybe documenting a few pieces here and there of that life. And then people catch on to it and they're like, oh, he seems successful and fulfilled. I want some of that. So I think the simple answer is just leading by having more men lead by example and sharing their gifts and inspiring the other men around them.
I'm thinking, a lot of the rock bottoms are heartbreaks, and a lot of the experience on the feminine side is like desiring the man to do the work, but none of us have like actually figured it out. We just stop dating the men who aren't doing the work and find the ones who are. But like the I'm wondering if there were a way that women could optimally support the men in their lives, whether they're dating them or they're just like brothers and friends. It's definitely not, "You should be doing this thing," because 'cause I've tried that many times. But what is the role of, the feminine in supporting the men and doing this work besides getting them linked to other men doing it?
Great question. Men want to be trusted by their woman. That is like cocaine for the man's spirit is his woman's trust. Is that a good metaphor? I have difficulty with this question because you can't, as you just reflected, Jessica, force someone to change. Like they're either ready or they're not, and they need to go through like some pain catalyst to be ready. When a woman can skillfully soften enough to trust her man and respect his efforts, that's a huge one. Men love their efforts respected.
Hmm.
Baby, I see all the hard work you're doing. I see how much what you're doing to provide for our family, to give us a great life. I love that about you. I
Mhm.
respect that about you. Like that's gold for a man. So leaning into how can I respect my man and trust him so much that it inevitably inspires him to step up? It's a good question to reflect on.
Yeah, I like the use of the word inspire, like how can I love and nourish him in a way that inspires more, that inspires him to step into his optimal being, that inspires him to act in a way that garners more respect and more trust. So,
Can
yeah.
I piggyback off something? For the women listening to this, because I've seen so many women get into this trap, so to speak. Notice a man's efforts, not his potential. Notice the way he shows up. Don't pay too much attention to your chemistry together. If women held men to that standard, like, hey, all the things you're saying are nice, but your actions don't match your words. And if you can show me with your efforts that you really love me, that you really want to pursue me, that you really want to be my man, show me that with your actions. Like women can save, and men, relationships in general can save so much time in this like immaturity zone and
Mhm.
jump straight to maturity if women held men to that standard and men held themselves to that standard in relationship.
Yeah, when you were talking and talking about, honoring the efforts being made, I was thinking that besides, focusing on the efforts being made, the other thing that she can do is leave, like stop pretending that he is someone that he's not, because it really is often the heartbreak that creates the catalyst.
Makes them grow.
Yeah, and so if you really want what's best for you and the other person, if you really love the way that you say you love, then, stay, of course, if it's a really aligned partnership. But if it's not, stop pretending like it's going to be,
Ah,
because the shift is definitely what's going to catalyze the growth better than staying ever could.
perfectly said. It takes two to tango.
Uh-huh.
And if one couple, one individual in the partnership is not growing, the relationship will inevitably die.
Mhm.
Everything in nature grows or it dies. It contributes to the whole or it's extinct. It goes extinct.
Mhm.
It's the same thing for relationships. If you
Yeah.
don't contribute and grow, the relationship will become extinct.
Mm.
Period.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes the most loving thing is leaving. It's like,
Yes.
my crisis moment was a breakup. It was the ending of an engagement. And that changed everything for me. Completely 180'd my life to where I'm on the path that I'm on today. And I think, this action of women respecting the efforts of men. See, I really want the men listening to this to open up to the possibility that women can do that, because there are so many men excluding themselves from romantic love because they believe that they need to be making six figures before they can entertain the idea of romance. But what I've heard from Jessica and other women about their partners is that it's not so much about them. It's actually not about them being a finished product. Is this man in integrity with his vision? Is every day he demonstrating steps in that direction? Is he willing to learn? Does he have this vision? Is he devoted to himself, to his God, to love? And if all those things are in place for a mature woman, that is a man that she will follow, even if he doesn't have $1 million yet.
Bingo. Spot on, brother.
I know money is something that you help guys with, and I don't want to get into the tactics of how to make more money. And I'm sure that there's a foundation that you set. What is it that is creating so much difficulty and uncertainty among men in establishing financial security?
What is the difficulty?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Our society is set up to keep people poor. We learn a bunch of bullshit in traditional public schooling systems that don't actually matter for real life, when instead we can be learning how to become more financially literate and be creative. And don't get me wrong, there are all schools like Waldorf, Montessori, so many other whole brain child schooling systems that are holistic for the child. But 95% of the world goes to these publicly run, government run schools. And I know I'm kind of getting into the weeds here, but our society is intentionally set up to keep the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. There is such a divide between the rich and poor now, and that gap is only getting more exaggerated. Like, you have to be making $148,000 a year with today's inflation to be considered middle class. Anything under $148,000 a year, you're considered below middle class into the poor zone. It's crazy. It's crazy. So on top of society being the catalyst that does not empower people to be wealthy, men have to be willing to unlearn the financial bullshit that they've learned from their parents and from school. I should say most parents and most schools, and relearn what money actually is, how money actually flows, how to generate it, how to compound it and protect it. And it's really not that difficult if we just put in some effort to understand it. So it's not men's fault, is what I just want to highlight. It's the way our society is set up. Not sure if that answered your question.
Yeah. I'm hearing that, it's not men's fault, but it is their responsibility. That
Exactly.
goes across the board. And you touched on something really interesting there that some people might label esoteric. You said undoing the programming that we've learned and understanding how money actually flows. Can you speak into that a little more?
There's nothing esoteric about it. Psychological, if anything. So banks make money in a few different ways. There's fee income, leverage income, capital gains income. There's one more. When you put your money in a bank account, before you sign up to be in a checking account for, say, Bank of America, you have to sign all these agreements that nobody ever reads. And part of those agreements are, hey, we can loan out the money that you give to us. It's called fractional reserve banking. We can loan out that money and then use that money to give to other people and then earn interest on that. And this is how the banks run the world. Trying not to get too deep into the weeds. There are relatively easy systems to understand of how to become your own bank. Let me give you a really quick example of my financial ecosystem. So first, you want to know the difference between a liability and an asset. And just stop me if I'm going too far into this.
Gotcha.
Liability, for those who don't know, takes money out of your wallet. An asset puts money into your wallet. So what's an asset? Real estate, stocks, cryptocurrencies, digital assets, gold, anything that appreciates in value over time is an asset. The dollar is the biggest Ponzi scheme when it comes to money. The dollar has lost nearly 100% of its purchasing power since 1970. We came off the gold standard, which means our dollars used to be backed 1-to-1. Now governments around the world can just print an infinite amount of money. And the only reason the dollar keeps working is because of people's belief in it. It's literally fucking worthless. There's no value to a piece of paper that's not backed by anything. So you could buy assets. I buy assets. I'm really into cryptocurrency. So I buy XRP. I have Bitcoin. I also have life insurance. I also have physical gold. So let's just take a stock. Let's say Tesla. Let's take XRP and let's take real estate. These are three assets that people can have. You can collect Tesla stock and collect real estate and collect XRP or Bitcoin, and it goes up in value every single year. And instead of selling those assets like most people do, what the rich do is they never sell their assets. They borrow against them tax-free. They use them as collateral. That's why you hear the rich, the billionaires, never pay taxes. It's because they don't. Only the middle class and poor people pay taxes. And it's not because of, it's because we're not knowledgeable about how money works. The tax code was made with the ultra rich in mind. So you collect assets that make you money. Just choose one to start. Put some money into it every paycheck. Let that asset build over time. And let's say it builds to $100,000. You can then take a loan out using that asset as collateral. And then take that loan and then put it into more assets that make you money. So you just repeat that process for 10 years, even focusing on one asset class like cryptocurrencies or stocks or real estate, and you can be completely financially free if you have a plan. I plan to put 20% of my earnings into this asset class every single month or every single week. And I'm going to repeat that for the next 10 years. And along the way, I'm going to borrow against it tax-free and then use that loan money to then invest in more of that asset. That's financial freedom.
Thanks for the intro. I'm like, this is like a whole other podcast. But
we got way off topic here.
But it's important because it's like, when you go through psychological progression and evolution, it's like your needs must be met. You must feel physically and financially safe in order for you to even care about like emotional capacity and emotional relating. So it's important for people to have this type of literacy. I'm wondering if there are specific resources that would be like a good place for people to start understanding, since this is just maybe the tip of the iceberg, but a really important topic.
Yeah, let me just say quick, Jessica and Isaac, that money has been, at least looking into my own life experience and many men I've worked with, money was such a destabilizer for my nervous system. It took away presence from the people I loved because I was so worried about money. And it seemed no matter what subconscious work I did, no matter what belief system work I did, while all that helped, things really started changing for me in terms of my emotional availability, in terms of the way I can show up in the world when I felt financially secure. So that's why I'm so passionate about helping men create more wealth and build systems to build their financial empire, because I see in my own life experience how much more ease I have knowing I have that. And that could be my own disempowering belief systems, but from my experience, it's been a game changer. So helping men embody more of that in their life, I think, is extremely helpful.
I'm seeing, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's a thing. If you're not familiar with it, Google it. And also their environment does have an effect. A question I'll ask guys in coaching is, if everything in your external world remained the same, are you open to the possibility of experiencing more peace within? And usually they're like, yeah. And it really does matter to your story. You did the subconscious work, you did the inner work, and yet that process didn't feel like it moved towards completion and sustainability until you organized your external environment to reflect that security back to you. And so, there's like this hyper spiritualism of like, if I just shift my beliefs and do the subconscious reprogramming, then everything else will, yeah, that's only half of it. It's like, we are humans. We're not only spirits. We are having a human experience as well. And whether you sign up for it or not, you're playing the money game. Unfortunately, that's already been a system that was established and you're in it. So I think taking that responsibility to create the external environment is really, it's required.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that, man. That made me feel validated, because I look back at some of my experiences as I've created the wealth that I have now, and could I have done that differently? Could I have done more work? I have these stories that maybe I shouldn't have been so focused on money, but also now, like, I feel really amazing and whole and centered in my life because I have that backbone. So like you just sharing that was just like, oh, yes, this is more than we are human and spirit. So thanks for saying that.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a couple more questions here. And just, I want to say to you, it's like there was some sacrifice involved to create the life that you have today. And I think, all men look back on seasons of sacrifice and they're like, did I like have to sacrifice that much or sacrifice that hard? And it's like, I always just ask them to ground back into the present. When you look at the life that you're living today and you let go of those questions of, was it too much or was it this? It's like, are you happy? Like, are you fulfilled? Like, what's your experience right now? Like, you're having the experience of having your empire and sitting on your rocking chair and like looking at my kids, my wife, guys that I work with are doing awesome. It's beautiful, man. So we always like to end this podcast with homework for the guys that are listening. And so if you were to assign one piece of homework to the audience, what would it be?
Select one area of life that you really genuinely from your soul want to see better, and put so much into yourself, like do so much volume in your own being and in your actions that it's unreasonable not to succeed in that area. in 6 to 12 months' time.
I love this. Um,
Like
it can be
obsess
like
over that one area.
yeah, it can be so overwhelming to just look at life as a whole, especially for people just starting down this path. But even I, like, 2 days ago, had an experience of, like, just looking at my whole life of all the things I wanna do, and it's just so powerful to focus on one area for a lot of reasons, but it's like, if you're changing the way that you're showing up in one area of life, especially if it's the one area that you feel needs the most assistance, the impact that that's going to have on all areas of life anyways is
Yes.
vast, simply because of, like, the devotion and the discipline and the numbers that you're putting into it. And I really like the perspective of volume, because it really is just like a volume game sometimes. There's all this stuff about there's this book called Mastery, and it talks about, like, all of the people that we assign as, the most intelligent people ever actually were just obsessed with what they were doing.
Yes.
They just were putting in hours and hours and hours of work, and people that, you're looking at that have the life that you want, you're only seeing this moment of time. You're not seeing the hours and hours and hours of work that they weren't being seen for what they were doing. So, one area of life to be devoted to.
You're rewarded in public for what you do in private.
That's right.
Do the homework. If you do the homework and you keep listening to this podcast and you do the homework that every guest assigns at the end of the episodes, your life will change. Part of our mission with this podcast is to make real examples of men leading with mature masculinity so apparent and so abundant that that we do buy back the market share that's being dominated by boys masquerading as men. So who is, yeah, feel that. Who is another man that our audience can look to, whether it's Google or read their book or dive into their work? Who's another man who our audience should learn from?
Not a man, but an organization. Sacred Sons. 100% They've been on my radar for years. One of my best friends is a very high up in leadership in Sacred Sons, and he's been inviting me to one of these events forever. I finally went to one a few weeks ago, completely changed my life. It feels like I already have my shit together. Again, I mean that humbly. Coming to this retreat, being surrounded by such powerful, heart-led men, I had 3 whole body shaking trauma releases that I wasn't even fully conscious were still gestating in here. And the result was I came home, I'm home now, and I feel like there's more access to me. This goes back to what we talked about previously, that proximity is power. Get around a bunch of men doing the work. And Sacred Sangha is just one of the best organizations out there, but there's many others. Get around men who are doing the work. Choose to step in, especially when it's uncomfortable, and your whole world could change.
It's not how, it's who. Jacob.
Ask me more questions. I'm not ready to be done yet.
This is the last one, so you got to milk it. Yeah, before we sign off and close, is there anything else that's on your heart or mind that wants to be expressed?
And I see the way men suffer because I am a man and I've suffered in that way. Golly, if we can just all come together and uplift each other and support one another and challenge one another to rise, how much of a better world this world can be with mature and initiated men in brotherhood.
Jacob, where can people find you?
Jacob Loves Being Alive on Instagram. That's my main channel. And you can find all of my offerings, my planners, my coaching, my courses, all the things in my bio.
Jacob, thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you.
You both are beautiful. And your presence on this podcast has been delectable. Thank you.